Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction. The talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org, for more info, or you can email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Cliff Sommers. We'll be discussing his new book, How Stupid Are We?, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Cliff was brought to People of Distinction today by some of the best movers in the business, Ingress Advertising Publishing. If you have a book that you'd like moved, move it through Ingress. You can find them at ingressadvertising.com. And guys, I am so excited to have Cliff here on the line because, listen, the book that we're going to be discussing, How Stupid Are We?, is so profound and so applicable to what we are currently going through. And I don't mean currently going through with the pandemic. Yeah, remember that? That's still happening. But in addition, guys, I'm sure you've all heard about it, not only here in the States, but globally as well. There's a lot of protests going on. There's a lot of marching going on. And although that is specifically revolving around the use of excessive force by police officers here in the States, the underlying message that's really at the heart of the protests, and although it started based upon that, really the message behind it, right, and how we're going to rise above and continue to move forward and really hopefully create a better tomorrow is through the use of voting. Right? Really expressing our voice, not only in the streets by protesting, but also taking it back to the ballots and voting. And what's wonderful about Cliff's book that he brought to the table today in How Stupid Are We? Is that's really what it revolves around. Is there's a lot of discrepancies happening here in the States, and this is just one particular form of it, right? What Cliff is going to be discussing in his book is really revolving around wealth disparity here in the country and many more things. And listen, Cliff is going to be able to articulate this much better than I ever could. So without further ado, let's bring him on the line with us. Cliff, thank you so much for being here with People of Distinction. How are you today?
I'm just great. Thank you so much for permitting me to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we're looking forward to it. And as I stated to you on the pre-screening call, I mean, this is a book and a message that we really need right now, that our human family really needs, because although there's a lot of dissatisfaction, there's a lot of disparities happening in the country, what's amazing about your book is there's hope at the end of the tunnel, right? There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to help us see that light. So without further ado, let's jump right in. How Stupid Are We? Tell us a little bit about the book.
The book is a pet project that stems from my concerns about the lack of responsiveness of the government to a whole host of problems. One of them that was of great concern to me is wealth inequality. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the old thing about the 1% and the 99%, the problem is that as time has gone on, the wealthy and the rich corporations have been able, through brilliant planning, I have to say, you can go to people like Charles Koch, who I consider to be a genius, if in my view, an evil genius. They have been able to put their money to work in many different ways in our education system, in our political system, and you name it, so as to twist our government into a far-right track. And they've done it by way of suborning the Republican Party, turning it into an obstacle to any progress that might benefit individuals. And of course, this is a spectrum. Those who are closer to the bottom have their oxes gored much worse as things go down toward that end. And so you talk about current racial problems or you talk about current problems of the poor in general, these are all caused in large part by this effort of the right. And the problem with it is we as voters keep electing people who will do things like put through a tax cut bill that will benefit corporations and the rich to a terrific degree, will benefit the middle class to a mild degree, if at all, and will benefit no one else. And we don't recognize it. We do not see that these people are telling us that we will benefit hugely if we elect them, and then they turn right around and screw us. If we don't recognize this, if we don't take matters into our own hands and vote them out of office, then it's on us. So we got to wake up. That's basically where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying here, Cliff. And again, this is a particular subject that I'm very passionate about. One thing that I love what you're talking about is, again, talking about that just voting, right? And this is such a thing that we've heard so many times. But I think, what is a personal point of interest for me is I think a lot of times when voting gets brought up, and hey, again, also, this is an election year, right? Now, the presidential election, although albeit very important, absolutely, and we need to get out there in droves, and we need to vote on getting the right presidential candidate in office. But even more importantly, if we want to see things really affected on a lower level, it starts off with our local government. Right? It starts off with voting in the correct mayors, the correct state representatives, House representative members. Those are really going to be the correct members that we need to really address and focus on to get things happening on a more day-to-day level, on a more local level that way. And I love the fact that you brought this book to our table, Cliff. Thank you so much for that. Now, next question that I really want to go into is talk to us about the title of the book. How stupid are we? Now, I can assume, where that title is derived from and why you decided to name your book that. But listen, you know what happens when you assume, right, Cliff? So I'm not going to go ahead and do that. Talk to us on how you developed that title creatively and why you decided to pick that particular name for your book.
Well, I picked that particular name because it is the question that runs through my mind constantly as I deal with the frustrations of the problems, which are described in great detail in the book. But as I think about those things, I constantly ask myself, how can I be this stupid? I'm supposed to be smarter. How can I have voted? Well, let me just say, how did I ever vote for Richard Nixon? But anyhow, to bring it up more to date, how can we not recognize that what we're voting for is exactly what's doing us in? And so, the title was inevitable. How stupid are we? Because it's not just me. And besides that, on a more mundane level, it's a title that hopefully grabs people's attention. Maybe they're slightly offended by it. What do you mean, how stupid are we? But, if they have that question, maybe they'll pick the book up. And of course, the book is orange and red and white. It's rather garish in its cover. So the idea was to gain attention, maybe somebody will, open a page.
Yeah, listen, I can just attest to that. It absolutely does grab the attention. Not only does the title, How Stupid Are We, it really perks your interest, right? But I remember when I was doing the research for it and I came across the book cover, Absolutely. You see a gentleman sitting down, right, in big letters. He has, he's wearing a dunce cap on his head, right? So automatically following along with the title, you're thinking, okay, well, this gentleman probably is not the most intelligent. But then you see on his shirt in big letters, it says U.S. voters. So it is a direct, like right off the bat, we know exactly what we're talking about here. We know exactly what we're going to embark upon. And listen, as you stated, some people may get offended, but at the end of the day, if you're getting offended by the face value of it, right? Really, when you go underneath and you start to examine and you do a little bit more research on the book and you actually start to read the book, you understand where this is coming from. And, Cliff, you're not actually calling anybody stupid. We're just, at the end of the day, it's almost, the way I see it is, it's almost a mirage that we're being fed a lot of times, right? As you stated before, a lot of times we go in and we vote for particular candidates, and then the moment they're into office, all of the stuff that they said initially to get voted, they flip 180 degrees and go and do the exact opposite, right? And they're basically just giving you lip service that way. And that is exactly how I took it. And I'm not, offended by it. I'm more so intrigued by it, right? And following off of that, or actually, really quickly before we go into that, let me take a quick break. Guys, again, here on the line with Cliff Sommers, discussing his book, How Stupid Are We?, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Now, Cliff, following off of that, talk to me and talk to our listening audience about your inspiration, and what inspired you to create this particular narrative. I know you were talking about, in particular to your experience, how you were foolish enough to vote for Nixon, when he ran for his presidency. What inspired you to write this book in particular, and really what inspired you to become an author and embark upon that creative journey?
Well, in a general sense, I was an English major. Mm-hmm. All English majors expect they're going to write a book, whether they ever do or not. So I've always been interested in writing. I got through a career as a lawyer, and I retired, and I had time, and so I wanted to write a book. I am passionate about the way our political system is broken and the way it does not serve the people of this country. And frankly, I'm somewhat frightened by it. And if we don't all get it together and understand that we have the power to prevent this, if we will wake up and we will use our votes intelligently. And I needed somehow to say that. I borrowed a line from an old movie. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Mm-hmm. That's in the book. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I agree with you, by the way. It isn't a matter of just the presidential election. You got to go down ballot all the way. Although, if we could get rid of Mitch McConnell, I would just love it.
He seems like he's just always there, right? It's just always there.
He is definitely of the party of no.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. He was of the party of no when we had Obama in the presidency. He seems like he's saying yes a lot of times to Trump. But, that's for another discussion.
No, all of the little people.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Now, we know about what the book is. We know what inspired you. What are you hoping to be able to accomplish? And I think we've already started to go into it, but I think a message of this magnitude just constantly needs to be impressed, right? And really just really set in stone. What really are we trying to say with this book? What are you trying to tell your readers with How Stupid Are We?
Well, from a facile point of view, particularly if you read the little blurb on the back of the book, you could see this as a simple attack on Republicans. And it is not. And it is my intent in the book to provide a plethora of facts, mm-hmm. provable facts to back up what I'm saying and for people to understand where it's coming from. And for instance, the book starts with a look at the party platform of the Libertarian Party in order to compare it at the end with the Republicans' party platform in 2016 to discover that they're very, very much alike. And that's how far right things have gone. And the book shows all the evidence to back it up. Hopefully, the evidence will help people understand how they're being screwed.
Wonderful. You know, listen, I have my own reflections that I'm going to make on that. I'm going to save that for my closing statement. Now, let's move on. Let's pause this book right now. Let's pause this title. Let's move on because you've written a second book as well. It's called Is He or Isn't He? Talk to us a little bit about that narrative.
The book is a response to a book written by a minister or preacher named Brooks. His book was entitled God's Not Dead, Evidence for God in an Uncertain World. It is full of pseudoscience and illogic, and I have always been somewhat interested in all of the cosmological issues, if you will, that revolve around theology, and cosmology and astronomy and all that sort of thing. And it offends me to have somebody write a book that is supposed to be about evidence when almost everything it says is not true. So I undertook to write a book to the contrary.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, listen, it sounds like a good old debate. Everybody has their voice, and there's one side of the story that was given in that other book, and you're just sharing your side with your evidence that you've been able to dispute that with. So definitely an educational book to really be well-rounded on. And what I love about that is, listen, whether you're religious, you're spiritual, you're atheist, at the end of the day, being knowledgeable and hearing all sides of the story is, I think, really the most important thing. Everybody is, of course, allowed to formulate their own opinion, and they're entitled to their own opinion that way. But being one-sided and formulating your opinion from that, I think, is where a lot of the danger lies. Right? Formulate your own opinion, but just know all the facts and know all of the evidence and all the information that's out there. And kind of tying things back up to how stupid are we? It's really along the same lines. I mean, you were talking about before. A lot of people may get that very first impression, when they read the back of the book, not even going into the confines of the book, but just reading the back of the book and the description that's written there. Their first impression may feel that, oh, this is a book that attacks Republicans. And what I love about the way you explain that, and what I've been able to formulate in terms of my opinion from doing the research and also from the pre-screening call and having this discussion with you thus far is, guys, listen, nobody is attacking Republicans. Nobody is attacking U.S. voters, right? You may get that impression from the title. You may get that impression from the description in the back. But ultimately, as I just stated with, when we were talking about his other title, Is He or Isn't He? It's all about being able to formulate your own opinion while knowing the facts, while knowing more of the information that's at hand. And, you eloquently put it when we first started this discussion, Cliff, when you were talking about one of the Koch brothers, and you were saying, listen, call a spade a spade. The man is a genius, a diabolical, or I think you used an evil genius, but a genius nonetheless. And say what you will about the Republican Party. And listen, I'm definitely, I'm a Democrat, and I don't agree with a lot of their policies. But that nobody is attacking them at the end of the day. They have a particular agenda that they're pushing as well. And although I, again, firmly stand against it, I think what's important is knowing the information at hand so that you can make an educated decision yourself, right? And we, listen, I think it's easy for me to say that I think once you read the book, I think it's easy to figure out on which side of the spectrum you'll fall on. But again, to each their own. I clearly fall on the left side, and I don't look at the Republicans as enemies. I think that at the end of the day, it's up to us to go out there and make our voices heard. As I stated, through these marches and these protests, they're fantastic because it's showing a lot. It's bringing to light a lot of injustices, and it's the peaceful protests, of course, are really showing things that need to be addressed and need to be discussed. But at the end of the day, that's only one side of it. Now we move forward and we vote, right? And as Cliff has so eloquently put it, not only in the presidential elections, voting in local elections, that is really how we become more intelligent and shy away from being stupid, as his title suggests. And there's so much valuable information here to be gained, and we have Cliff here to thank for that. So one more time, Cliff Sommers, we discussed How Stupid Are We, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. And then we also addressed his other title, Is He or Isn't He? Guys, get out there, pick up your copies. This is absolutely very enlightening. And Cliff, thank you so much for bringing these books to our table and talking to our listening audience about them.
I enjoyed it. It's been a great honor to speak to you. Honor to speak to you. Honor